Deirdre O'Kane, thank you for joining me on the Mindful podcast.
Thank you for having me, Dermot. Delighted to be here.
We're talking about wisdom today, paths to wisdom.
Don't know what you're talking to me for.
Well, you see, I do know why I'm talking to you, because I've been just watching what you've been doing, most importantly, watching how you've been doing it. And it seems to me that you're on this beautiful, like a second trajectory.
Yes, I think that's fair.
You know, my meditation teacher spoke about this thing called Dri, which is these arcs that our lives follow, these natural arcs.
What was that word you just used?
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly. It's like Dri.
Dri.
It's like
Deirdre.
Deirdre.
It's in my name. Yeah.
Somebody can correct me on it. But it's the idea that our life follows these natural arcs.
Okay.
And that we travel up one full of excitement and energy, and then naturally over time, it starts to come down the other side. But at the same time, there's a new arc forming. So as you're coming down one, there's an intersection with another one coming up. And it seems to me that you're kind of passing through this gorgeous intersection where there's a new feeling of energy. And
it's fascinating to me that that's so obvious. I mean, I'm aware of it, but I'm fascinated that you're aware of it and that other people seem to be able to see it as well. That surprises me.
Well, I don't think you can hide that kind of radiance, because that's, I think, what it is. When you're in your flow, and when you're in a place where you've finally stopped throwing a lot of your familiar roadblocks in your own way.
Yes.
I think that comes across.
I think that's
and
true.
People can't help but see it. But sometimes we're the last people to see it. Other people might notice it first.
Yeah.
Is that where you feel you are now?
I agree with what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah.
I know I'm in a very good place.
Yeah.
And it's a very nice feeling. Awful pity it didn't happen 20 years ago.
But isn't the point that I don't think it can.
No, I don't think it can. Well, maybe if you're lucky. Maybe if you're lucky and you're cotton on to how to and you learn more earlier, maybe you can.
But isn't it perspective? I don't see how, at 22 or 3, we can ever have that perspective to give us that sense of being able to really enjoy it, to not be second guessing ourselves, to have contrast to the tough times so that you appreciate it a bit more.
Yeah. Correct. You can't, you haven't faced enough challenges. You probably haven't had enough crises and you haven't had, there's just not enough air miles, is there?
Yeah.
At that stage. And therefore, that's the great advantage of getting older, as we're constantly dissing ourselves for this aging process. Might as well embrace the good stuff, which is this.
Yeah.
The hard-earned bit of wisdom, maybe.
What are the moments at the moment that you are really kind of savouring? I know you mentioned before, it's like I saw on TV on Tommy Tiernan talking about, your young fella can make eggs, so it's all good. What are the moments now where you're like, oh, this is great. I'm enjoying this.
By moments, I mean, I'm not sure how to clarify moments, but where I'm at is, I suppose, one child is flown the nest and one can stand on his own 2 feet. So that has given me a real new lease of life. And people don't really talk about that very much. I've come out the other side. When you do those, let's call it roughly 15 years of domestic slavery, even if you have a job as well, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I'm very grateful for it. And I adore the ground that they both walk on. But I'm very happy to get a bit of time back for myself. And also, in terms of the work, I don't think I'd fully committed to being a comic in the way that I've committed now. So this is new territory for me. And I think they're intertwined.
Yeah.
Those two things.
I guess, well, you're probably referring to the jobs you did in the past in terms of you were an actress at the same time as being a stand-up and you were a mom. So you're not focusing on one thing.
Yeah, it's very hard to. You can't. And the commitment to the stand-up, I couldn't give it. And I don't think I wanted to give it, if I'm honest. My kids were just too little. And I don't know. And then again, I kind of think we tell ourselves these bloody stories, don't we? It's just a yarn. You know, really, maybe I just didn't want it enough back then.
Yeah.
I didn't get it. I don't think I fully got what it took to be very good at it. I don't think I fully got the commitment that was required. And now that I do, I'm quite hungry for it again. And that's lovely. I'm enjoying that.
But isn't it nice when you can focus on one thing? Certainly something I'm experiencing now. I was always felt like I was being pulled in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
The radio was taking so much of my energy that then when I turned my attention to things I was really passionate about, I guess a lot like you're saying, I just couldn't give myself to all of it. And I guess I did the best I could, you know? So now I'm really experiencing like doing things like this is something that I always wanted to do. And it's a load of work, but I absolutely love it. But it needs that full attention, you know?
Yep.
So what does it mean for you now to be able to fully focus your attention on your stand-up? What does that look like? Is that you're spending more time writing, or that you're able to review the stuff that you've done and learn from it a bit more? How is it manifesting?
Do you know what? It's actually not so much about the actual job of it. It's more about reaching a point. So, okay, am I being entirely truthful saying, okay, now that the kids are kind of a bit bigger, I have time? Yeah, there's truth to that. But I've also come into a better space in my head. So I've silenced a bit of the inner critic. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of quite a loud inner critic that I finally managed to shut the fuck up.
Well, everybody listening will be like, please God, please Deirdre, tell me how you did that, because everyone's head is melted with that voice that starts off from a good place going, oh, don't forget the thing and make sure, and it's an amalgamation of, I don't know, whatever authority figures we've had in our lives, or possibly, but then it starts to get a little bit too eager and works a little bit too hard, and then it's relentless. It can be really, really wear you down and be a harsh voice. So
yeah.
How did you silence it?
I started the work quite a long time ago. As in, I'd say it's many, many years from when I probably first picked up a self-help book. Let's go back to there.
Yeah.
And that was a revelation when I realised, oh God, you know, when I picked it up, I just related to so much of what.
Do you remember what it was?
I think it was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it was, I went to see a dermatologist about something. I'm sure I was trying to save my face. Anyway, as it was in the beginning. Yet another vanity project. Anyway, I made some disparaging comment about myself. Something self-deprecating. Now, if you're a comic, we are very used to being self-deprecating and using every negative thing and every flaw in a way to your advantage.
Yeah.
In that you will somehow get laughter out of it and therefore make a living out of it. But anyway, when I made this comment to this woman, she was very taken aback. And she said, why would you say that about yourself? And I said, well, I'm self-deprecating for a living. That's what I do. And she said, oh, that's very interesting. And that's all very well. However, a certain amount of that you're really taking in and believing. And she was the first person who picked me up on what I was saying in that way. And I recognised that there was truth in what she was saying. And she recommended the book. And it was either Feel the Fear or Heal Your Life. It was one of those. Well, you know, it was a pretty standard Hallmark card self-help book. It wasn't, you know, it was perfect actually for the first one that you're going to pick up. I now have many, many, many of them. But that was the start. And that was a good long while ago. I certainly didn't reach the place I'm in now until quite recently. But I was trying to get there.
So did you kind of cultivate an awareness of that voice? Like once we become aware of it and we hear, oh, actually maybe that thought isn't true.
Yeah.
You know, it feels real, but it may not be true. So over time, I guess you just became aware that that little voice wasn't exactly helpful all the time.
Absolutely. And I started sort of reading more books and maybe moving up a gear, and then we'll get on to people like Eckhart and we move up another gear, and I kept reading them, and I had a stack of books beside the bed. And I was very aware that if I read a little just before I went to sleep, that would help me to calm my head, because I have a very busy head, and I'm a shockingly bad sleeper still, even though I know I have all the tools to stop it. I will still get bouts of insomnia. But anyway,
do you wake up in the middle of the night?
No, I'll find it hard to get to sleep, or I'll sleep for 4 hours and then wake.
Yeah.
One or the other. But anyway, so the stacks of books were there. They were there, and I was doing quite well. And then I knew I needed to take it up another gear. And then I was, for some reason, every time I picked up a magazine or read something, it was about meditation. So I felt like that was, I knew to be alert to the signs that something was telling me it would be a good idea for you to meditate. So I did a course. I was living in London, and I then started sort of just, was I Googling? I don't know. I can't remember, but I started looking into meditation, and transcendental meditation presented itself via Jerry Seinfeld, because he's a huge TM man.
That's right, yeah.
Him and David Lynch, the filmmaker. So once I thought, well, it was good enough now for Jerry Seinfeld. That'll
and
do
how did
me.
you find that when it started? When you started doing it, did it fit naturally, or was it a struggle?
The course, I went to see this lovely Indian lady in Shepherd's Bush, and I walked in the door, and the incense was going and the vibes, and I was like, oh Jesus, now just take a moment, breathe now and go with this, Deirdre, because it wouldn't be my scene really.
Yeah.
However, I think she had 2 or 3 of us together, and really once she said close your eyes and sort of bring your energy towards your heart and go in, I was able to do it. And I liked that I was able to stop the noise, and they give you the word to, is it a mantra?
Your mantra to repeat, yeah.
To repeat. Now, I ended up getting a fantastic 10 minutes bit of stand-up out of this.
Of course.
Do you want to hear the bit? No,
yeah.
you don't. It's a bit sidetracky. She gave me, this made me laugh at the time. She said to me, okay, and the word is, and she'd made this big ritual. I was to bring flowers and a bit of fruit, and yippity-doo-dah, hippity-doo-dah day. So I brought all the stuff, and I was sitting there, and then she said, now close your eyes, and as if she was meditating, she said to me, and the word is Corinne. Well, it took me all my strength not to just, my eyes not to fly open and say, sorry, no, I can't. That can't be the word. That won't work for me. Because our previous landlady was called Corinne, and she had refused to give us back our deposit on our apartment. And we had ended up in the small claims court trying to get the money back off her, because it was a considerable amount of money, and her name was Corinne. And I thought, I've just spent 2 years trying to get the name Corinne out of my head, and this is the name you're giving me now? But so can you believe it? Like Sod's Law, Dermot. Like, what are the
so
chances?
Weird, isn't it?
Isn't it bizarre?
That's just the universe having a laugh.
Well, it is. Was also handed me 10, 15 minutes material that I made a good chunk of money out of. I thought, well, that'll pay for the course. This will pay for the course, which was about 400 quid, and I thought that was a shocking amount of money. So that's quite funny. But once I put
Did she give you a new one?
No, I never told her. I never told her. She was too far gone. Like, I opened my eyes to look at her. She was gone. She was in a zone with her eyes closed. So I was like, okay, you may get on with this, love. So I did get on with it.
Yeah.
And,
so you found that meditation did calm that critical inner voice and calmed the busy mind.
Yeah, it did. Now, my big problem then is, much like the books, I lapse. So
everybody does.
Yeah. That's the hard part, to try and do it every day and make it a practice every day. That's really hard, isn't it? That's
when we become the crisis meditator. Like, we forget. We do it for a while, feel great, then think we don't need it, we forget.
Yeah.
And then, you're a young fella's doing the Leaving Cert, and you're like suddenly meditating for 5 hours a day on his behalf. So it happens to everybody.
Well, I certainly know that I need to do it. I know that I'm better. I thrive and I do better if I try to stick with it. So I still don't manage it every day, but certainly I'll probably get a few days a week in. And then I started thinking of it as a little nap and realizing I'm very tired. Like my body goes into a natural slump before a show. And it took me years to understand how much it takes to get on stage for 75 minutes on your own and how much brain power you're using there. And I didn't understand that when my body went into a slump in the afternoon, it was literally conserving energy because it knew what was coming up ahead. I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
How slow am I?
But I was exactly the same. I used to get freaked out because I would be exhausted at like 4 o'clock, and you're thinking, I've got to get up on stage in a few hours.
Why didn't nobody
Why
tell
am
us
I so
this?
tired? But same thing. One day I went, that's what it is. My body knows what's coming, so it's trying to save energy.
Yeah,
Both of us
totally.
are stupid.
Totally, both of us are stupid. And because of that, then I realised, well, now, if you would get into the bed and sit up and just close your eyes and do, even if you don't sleep, if you do try to just stop the noise for 20 minutes, I knew that would revitalise me. And Jerry Seinfeld, when he was fascinating, when he was describing how he got into TM, it was because he was not just performing in Seinfeld, he was the writer and the producer. And those hours, can you imagine the hours? Insane hours. And he said he would go into his office at lunchtime and sit on the floor with his back against the wall and close his eyes for 20 minutes. And he reckoned he just wouldn't have gotten through without it. That he reckoned it was the equivalent of about 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
When I heard that was it, because I know I'm always short on sleep. So I thought, well, maybe this can be my catch-up balance thing.
Yeah. I guess the wisdom we have comes from the life experiences that we have.
Yeah.
As we've said at the top, we can't really learn this stuff until we go through some things. Do you mind talking about Stephen's illness?
I don't. I mean, Stephen's written a book about it, so
yeah.
He's very open about it himself. Otherwise, I'd probably be guarded, but I'm not, because he's not.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, to bring people into the story, so it wasn't it 2016 you moved back from London?
I'm not great on dates, but if you say it was 2016, let's roll with that.
Well, you came back from London. You'd obviously been living there a long time, and you felt like you wanted to bring everything home.
Mm-hmm.
And you were only home a few weeks, and Stephen got the diagnosis that he had stage 4 cancer, which is something that you just don't want to hear.
Yeah, pretty grim.
When you heard that, did you have any coping mechanisms that you had kind of started at that, or do you just get sent into a spiral or a kind of a haze?
I am very good in crisis. I think a part of that is because maybe we're comics, because we face fight or flight so often, and you have to learn to control that panic. So, like, if I'm on a plane now, if there's turbulence on a plane now, I'd be as cool as a breeze. If I said, I'd be like, now, if we're dying, lads. There's no point panicking. You may get that gin and tonic into you and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You can't control this situation. So I am good. I'm not superhuman, obviously. And I had my moments where I faced the darkness. But at that, my head is very practical.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, until we know that this is game over, can we just look at what they're saying as possible, which is one massive surgery initially, get through that, see how that goes, then 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 chemos, get through that, then another surgery, then another round of chemos. My head is I'm an optimist. Ultimately, I will go to the positive place first. And I'll say, I really refused to see that he was going to die. I never went there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't allow myself to go.
Where do you think that natural mindset came from? Because a lot of people would go straight to worst case scenario.
Yeah, I don't do that. I don't go to worst case scenario. I think, I'm not sure, Dermot, I don't know the answer. I don't know where it comes from. I come from strong people. I think my parents were quite strong, resilient. I think they faced an awful lot of, you have to just keep getting up. I think that's my belief, isn't it? Getting up. And also, it's just not helpful. It's not practical. You don't know the outcome. You don't know yet. So unless they'd said, there is a point when people are having treatment for stuff and they say, we can't do any more, you know, and you do have to face. But we didn't get that, you know. So as far as I was concerned, you haven't gotten that memo now. So just focus on what you can do.
Yeah.
I did go and see this spiritual friend of mine who once a week, when Steve was sick, and she would, I would close my eyes and she would do a lot of mantras and meditations, and I would listen, and that helped massively.
So you were open to that by the time you went to this person. It wasn't as if you suddenly went, you know, normally I would laugh at all that, but now I'm in a desperate situation. You know, sometimes when we're under pressure, we open our mind. We're less cynical of things if we think they're going to help us or help someone that we love. But I think from what you were saying, you were already kind of there. You're open to it.
I was already there, yeah. And I'm quite spiritual in my own way. I don't know about that word. I think it's been sullied a little bit. But
yeah. It's a bit commercialised now.
It's a bit commercialised. Pity, isn't it?
And is Stephen that way?
No.
And was that difficult for you in that he's, you know, you're both facing into this, him in particular, because it's literally involving his health, and you would naturally reach for something outside or bigger than yourself. If you see him struggling and he doesn't have that perspective, is that hard? He
got that perspective, and I was certainly able to help him. And he's on his own way, doing his own thing now.
Yeah.
But at that time, I thought, well, I can't do it all for you. You're going to have to find a way now. And he did. But yeah, it's interesting. We all come to these things at different times. And you're just lucky if you do come to it, because some people don't at all. So that idea that you're evolved in some way, that you've started to understand this human journey that we're all on.
Yeah.
Not everybody gets to be alive to it. So I think you're very lucky if you reach a moment where you go, oh, there's a penny dropping, I think I get this. Because then you really get to dig deep and understand it all. And it's no accident, I should also say, that I started to see a therapist about maybe a year ago, about a couple of things that I just needed to sort. And I don't think that's an accident that I'm in a particularly good place now. That's also helped. So I'm doing the work.
You sure are.
Yeah.
What's amazing, you know, you talk about sort of digging deep and getting on with it and finding that inner strength, you know, when you were dealing with Stephen's illness. I know that during that time, obviously, there's the financial reality of, you've spoken about that, of just, you know, you're also trying to deal with, you know, the person you love more than anything going through all of this. But then there's the reality that you're now down in income and you have to keep working.
It's amazing. And the only reason I brought that up, honestly, is because people don't like talking about money, and they don't like talking about struggle. And that's a very real part of when anybody's sick.
Yeah.
And they just don't. I suppose it's people are embarrassed by it, aren't they? You don't want that to be an issue. Like, and maybe everybody presumes that your health insurance is going to kick in somehow, or that you've got a job and that's going to be covered. But if you're an artist or if you're self-employed, that stuff does not kick in.
Yeah.
There is no safety net. So that was the reason I spoke about it, because I know other people won't. But anyway, I've cut across you there. You were going to say something.
Well,
or ask me something.
I was just thinking of you dealing with that. Like, going to work is hard enough, you know, when you've got something big, heavy weighing on your mind. But to stand up in front of a crowd and be funny and be jovial, you know, like for people looking in from the outside, they would say, God, that must be even harder. Like, you were literally leaving Vincent's hospital and driving to perform on stage. I mean, that's a hell of a gear shift.
Yeah, it's a hell of a gear shift. It was insane. But you know what? It gave me an awful lot as well. I was very strong. Like, by the time when I came through that, when we came through, when Steve got the all clear, and I thought, there was one night in particular. Okay, so you say moments. You know, there are moments in your life. And maybe I kind of believe that actually happiness is just moments. And there was one moment when he was very sick and he was just out of surgery, looking like something that had been pulled out of a car. There was just so much going on in the ICU. And I was in Vicar Street that night doing a solo show, and I drove myself in. But before I left, I was shaky.
Yeah.
I was physically shaky. And there was a nurse looking after him and a guy. I'd never met him again. I don't know his name. I feel like I should try and find him. But I said to him, do I need to be worried about him? Like, is he going to survive? Is what I was asking. And he said, I said, I have to go to work now. I said, like, do I need to be worried? And he said, no, you don't need to worry about him. He said, no, I've got him. He said, this is my job. I'm all over my job. And he was so reassuring. I mean, he was angelic. He was like, he said, I'm going to do my job now brilliantly, and you're going to go and do yours brilliantly. And he lifted me up. Do you know, if you ever believe in an energy that you need to meet to carry you?
Yeah.
Well, this man was absolutely, he carried me 100%. 100% if he hadn't said those words to me, I don't think I would have been able to get in the car and go on stage and do what I did. It was just it was a moment I thought, yeah, you're just going to do your job. It's not extra special. Yes, you're going on stage to make people laugh, but it's actually just your job. And he's a nurse earning a fraction of what I will earn tonight, telling me that he's going to do his job brilliantly. And I had so much respect for them. For that profession, the amount of time I spent in hospitals, I have so much respect for them. And there you go. That's one of the moments. You have moments in your life that you don't forget. Now, I will say, the show was entirely an out-of-body experience. I was in some kind of autopilot.
Was it good? Were you good? Did you do your job brilliantly?
They thought it was good.
Yeah.
What did I think? I don't remember it. It was like a blink of an eye. I came off. I felt like I had been in an entirely... I was out of my body. But I was able to deliver it. I knew the show well enough that I was able to go through it and get through it.
Because it's not one of those things. Like, there were times on the radio where I could go to the audience, do you know what? My mum's really sick or something. You could just be honest and say, look, this is what I'm dealing with. But, you can't really do that as a stand-up. You can't walk out on stage, can you?
No, you can't.
But at that point.
But also the mindset, the perspective there is everybody's got stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody at every time has got their own stuff going on. So get over yourself. Do you know what I mean? That's what my practical head just goes, well, there's people in the audience who bought a ticket who have awful shit going on. And they've come here for a bit of light relief, so give it to them. There's that perspective too, isn't there? Did
you ever think about cancelling shows around that time and saying, look, it's just too much?
No, never. No. I think that has to be, but that will have been my actress training. The show must go on training. I mean, if you work as an actor, I've seen many actors go on stage when there'd been a death in their family, and they'd still come in and go on. That was kind of drummed into you that was a thing. So certainly would never. But I mean, obviously, if I had been facing death or something horrific, you wouldn't be able to go on, and I wouldn't. But no, I never considered cancelling. Also, Dermot, I needed the money.
Yeah.
Getting back to,
as you said,
keeping the wheels turning. We had returned home to this massive rent, worse than our London rent. I was just like, oh my God. I was so grateful that I could earn.
Yeah.
That was the other thing. I had real gratitude for the fact that I had written a show. I had given up stand-up. I had walked away from it for 10 years. And this was my first show back. And I was just so grateful that I had that show in my pocket, that I was able to do it all. But I'll tell you what, the thing about being challenged is, and they say you don't know how strong you are until you're challenged, right? You can't know your own strength until you're up against it. But after that, I thought, well, now I can do anything. That's a very powerful feeling. I thought if I could go in there and drive my car in and do that after that and survive and do it okay, I can do anything. And very shortly after that, Darren Smith asked me to do comic relief with him, and I did not want to do it. But I said yes.
So people may not know that you have organised comic relief in Ireland. They might be familiar with the UK one a little bit more from being on the telly, but they will be aware of the Irish one, but may not know that you were the driving force behind it.
One of them, yeah.
What made you want to take on such a big project at that time? Because you would have been forgiven for going, you know what, I just want to keep life a bit simple for a while.
Oh, yeah.
And, go for walks on the beach. And
yeah, I mean, I don't think Steve was very happy with me when I took that on. It was like, oh my God, are you for real? There was just too much happening. But you see, what was happening at the time was the Syrian crisis. And we were watching the dinghies and the boats and the refugees coming across in the sea. And that child had been swept up on the beach, and it was intolerable. It was, much like people are finding the Gaza situation intolerable now. That was the crisis we were all watching then. And I was doing a show, and Darren Smith, who's a great producer, was driving me home, and we were talking about it. And he said, we've got to do something. And I have a very strong sense of injustice. If I wasn't a comic, I'd like to be a humanitarian of some kind. I think I would have gone down that road.
Yeah.
That would psychology and all of other things that interest me a lot. I kind of rage against injustice. I have a real rage. So I've always kind of felt like I need to do something. I have to listen to that voice. So when we had the conversation on the way home from a gig, literally, and I'm saying we should do something, he said to me, I've been trying to get comic relief off the ground in Ireland for years, for like 10 years, and I can't get it going. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, I just can't get the response. I'm not getting enough. I don't know enough top comics to say, will you do this and to harness? And I said, okay, well, I'll do it with you. And that was the start. But I thought I was only doing one gig. I didn't think I was tying myself into, okay, 3 shows later in the 3 Arena. Now we've gone to RT. Now we've got a telethon. But, now we've raised, close to 7 million quid. And I know how far that money goes. And now I can't stop. And I don't want to.
And you managed to do it in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Well, as you say, part of you is thinking, I can literally do anything because I've been through what I've been through and I navigated that. Do you think that feeling of I can do anything has just stripped away a lot of that critical inner voice, that self-doubt? What does that power give you, do you think, in terms of how your mind operates? Is it just sort of simpler? Are you more grateful? Or what are the things that does for you? That feeling of, well, as you said a minute ago, I think I can do anything. I know I can do anything now.
Well, I'd say the therapist that I've been to see recently helped me a lot with that, in the sense that she will say to me, like, there's an awful lot of, when you get to a certain point, there's a lot of mileage. You've got a lot of air miles. You've got a lot of medals on your chest. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You've done a lot. And as she would say, this isn't the time to sit back. This is the time to absolutely step into that power. It's been hard earned, and I didn't really get that. And I realized, yes, it wasn't easy to get up here. I've grafted.
But that's a pushback against what the norm of society kind of is, that I just know when I log on to anything, I'm getting ads for hearing aids and, retirement packages. And I'm like, I just turned 51. I'm not ready to plug myself into some retirement package just yet, or get the carriage clock and wave goodbye to everybody.
Not only are you not ready to get a carriage clock, you're at your best. That's the point. You're way better now than you were 20 years ago. That's the lovely thing, right? So once you have an understanding of that, well, then you feel suddenly very alive and you go, oh my God, I got a lot of, what is it they say? Is it 100 hours, 10,000 hours, is it?
Yeah.
I always get this wrong and the people crack over me. Emma was laughing at me on the podcast. 100 hours, you're not going to get far in your 100 hours, love. It's 10,000 hours. to be very good at what you do. We've certainly got the 10,000 hours. And what would you be throwing it away for at this point? Now's the time to like step into that and go, well, I bloody earned it. I'm going to enjoy it. And I am enjoying it.
How about energy? Because I think we're talked into low energy as well. There's an assumption that, well, you don't really, as you say, go for it or step things up at a certain phase, particularly if your kids are kind of, starting to leave the nest and things.
Yeah.
People are reluctant to take on new challenges and new businesses or things like that because they feel that, I don't have the same energy I used to have and all. Like, how's your energy, for instance? How do you feel?
I have 5 times the energy I had 10 years ago. Easily.
And is that coming?
I was run ragged. I was still making lunches and dinners, and I had I was trying to do all those things, and I don't have that now. And I'm enjoying what I'm doing. But
which do you think comes? Does the energy allow you to enjoy what you're doing, or when you find something that you're truly in flow with, that the energy just comes?
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm in flow.
Yeah,
quite considerably. And I'm managing to hold on to it. I'm actually terrified it's going to go. I have a little tiny niggle of, oh God, please don't go, because it feels so good where I am. And I don't want to lose it. And you think, oh God. And you know all those phrases that you never understood when you were younger, that things like let the good times roll, things like that, because there are good periods in your life.
Yeah.
And then the shit hits the fan. Something kicks off. But anyway, it's no point. I'm not doing that. I'm going day by day. But to answer your question, yes, it's the flow. That's what gives the energy, right? And you also know that when you're in flow, incredible things happen. And you meet the right people and the right energies come into your life and everything just seems to go nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to avoid making those kind of old people noises getting in and out of chairs. I think that my brother's wife was giving out to him, was saying, would you just stop making that sound? And we can kind of, in our behaviors and in our language, I think we can subconsciously talk ourselves into an older state.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like doing things like, getting in and out of chairs is one of those things, are constantly, you definitely have, I wake up with weird pains, in my shoulder or whatever, but you could spend your time talking about that all the time, and fixating. And I'm talking now like, the two of us are 75, but I do think, because I've noticed, maybe it's from my own experience of recently leaving radio, and people, even though they're excited for you, there's part of them that clearly think you're a bit mad for stepping away from something dependable that you've, worked over years for, and now, I'm moving into a different space and creating a new business.
I'd have the totally opposite view now to, the madness of stepping away. I'd be completely opposite. I'd be like, oh God, that's so exciting. Here comes fresh energy. Because I get very bored and tired of things quite quickly.
Yeah, I'd be the same.
I love the pivot. I'd be like, okay, now come on, I need to switch up now. I need something now to bring my head into something new that's exciting. So and therefore that's why it suits me to be very busy. That's why, in a way, it suited me to say yes to comic relief. And I'm at my best when I have a lot going on.
Yeah. How do you manage, though? And I think I'm very similar. Like, I love doing the lots of things. Now, it's great because you get to, scratch all those itches and keep your mind excited and challenged. But there's always that little bit of a doubt and a wondering, if I'd only just focused on one thing, would I just be really good at that now? Like, far better.
But there's no rules, Dermot, and we're all made differently.
Yeah.
So focusing on one thing is going to work for someone and it won't work for someone else. So.
And how do you stop yourself, if you do have lots of things on the go, just taking on that the kind of the buckaroo element of it, to refer to an 80s toy that maybe some people don't remember, but you put one extra thing onto the donkey and suddenly, yeah. How do you have any conscious system for making sure that you don't take on too much?
No, I do take on too much, but I try. I'm quite aware that I really don't want to crash. I've crashed before.
What did that feel like?
Awful. So I've hit a wall before. So I'm quite aware. If my sleep is very bad, I know to do something about it. If that means I have to take a sleeping tablet for a couple of weeks, I will. Because sometimes the meditation and the melatonin won't touch the sides. I'll get a proper bout of insomnia. So I won't ignore that. I know, like on the road as well, diet and stuff. Oh my God, you're grabbing food out of apple greens and you're drinking a low sugar Red Bull. I mean, I'm doing that regularly because I'm doing so much mileage and I get tired driving, so I do lots of that too. It's not like I'm living a beautiful life. I'm like, oh Christ, here's another apple green sandwich and a can of Red Bull. So there's that side of it, but I am aware. I'm always aware, you need to give that a bit more attention. I know when I have to sleep and I know when I'm eating badly to sort of try to correct that, or if I'm maybe drinking a bit too much, just try to slow down.
What was it that led you, do you think, into that period of crashing?
The crash?
Yeah.
Oh, I had a very bad miscarriage before I had my first child. So it was quite traumatic. And Steve's sister had died 6 months previously, aged 41, of cancer. So we had just been through this awful time. But I was on the road. I was touring with the show. But after the miscarriage, I got back on stage like 5 days later. And really, I wasn't ready. But I thought it was a coping mechanism. Do you know what I mean? It was, So I went back on the road. And as soon as that tour stopped, the minute it stopped, I swear to God, I woke up the next morning, my head spinning. I sat up in the bed and I got this dreadful vertigo. Like I couldn't stand. I couldn't stand. There was absolutely nothing in my body. I was broken. And I went to see an acupuncturist and I crawled in the door to her. And I crawled up on the bed and told her what had happened. And she said, there's nothing in your body. She said, you've been surviving on adrenaline. She knew straight away. She said, literally, you are an empty tank.
Yeah.
And I would say it took me the guts of 10 to 12 weeks to get well. So I'm never going there again. And I did it once and I learned and thought, okay, that just cannot happen again. Shocking, isn't it?
Well,
so what age was I? I was about probably 34, maybe, when that happened.
Yeah. But I think it happens to a lot of people, and because we're told to just keep going, and it's keep doing it and go. And particularly in your 30s, I think you overestimate your energy reserves in your 30s, And
you definitely, I certainly didn't have any awareness of diet at that time.
Yeah.
And the way they might now, I think then it was just like, I don't know what I was eating, but I certainly wasn't eating well. And I was probably throwing the drink down my neck, and just masses of adrenaline getting on stage, ignoring everything until your body goes, no, you're not doing that anymore.
Yeah. How are you with alcohol these days?
Oh, I love me alcohol.
I'm drunk right now.
And I'm not giving it up for anyone. I'm so grateful that I don't have a drink problem. Thank you, God.
It doesn't affect you in terms of just what it does to your system?
I don't drink an awful lot. I'm very lucky. Like I have a gin and tonic most days, 5 or 6 o'clock.
God, how very Downton Abbey of you.
Yeah, I don't have the second one though. Most. I don't need to. So now I can drink plenty with the best of them on a night out, but I'm not having loads of them either. And a lot of the time with shows, I'm driving back, so I'm getting a car, so I'm not drinking, obviously.
Yeah, that does a lot for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
In the early days, I always found a way to stay over because I knew then I could have a few pints. So
Yeah.
as I get older, I'm glad of the drive home because it keeps you
I
out
do
of trouble.
a lot of the driving now, a lot of big drives back. But I mean, huge journeys. I like sometimes the Kerry trip, I'll stay over, allow myself to have a few drinks. But I do love wine and I do love gin and tonic. And I'm, like I say, I'm genuinely grateful that I'm able to drink the way I do because I have many friends who can't. And it's a bit of a blessing.
Yeah.
It's like good food and wine I consider to be the great gifts.
Do you know, your language is so positive, kind of cheapens it, but your language has just a lovely lightness to it. Like you use the word gratitude and gift and blessing and things like that a lot, in your conversation. You seem like someone who has got a lot of gratitude in their life. And again, that word has been cheapened a little bit and makes you think of, journals with glitter pens and things. But there is a real depth to gratitude and it's incredibly powerful for helping us appreciate where we are, very simply.
I agree with you. And I think love and gratitude have become my religion. And if I do it, and I know that if I stick with that, I do very well. I'm in flow. So I know, it's not rocket science, is it, Dermot? Like, really, if you could just hold to the practice and just make yourself do it, it works.
Yes.
It works. So that's where I'm at. I'm kind of at a point, I think, where I'm able to sustain it enough to float along. If they would write my jokes, it'd be great.
I don't think you need any help there. The tour, okaying it?
Yes. Well, here's another example of how well things are going, right? So if you were to look at me and say, God, O'Kane is on something. What's she on now? She's in a very good place. Like, my tour is practically sold out. It's the first time that's ever happened to me, this far ahead of time.
Yeah.
I've always done well, but this is new. This is like, okay, something is happening. There's a shift. It's great. It's great.
Yeah. The podcast is flying as well?
Podcast is flying and I'm loving that so much. Again, just two women that I love, Emma Dorn and Laura Green, who's our producer, and I just love seeing them on a Monday morning. And I think another aspect of being a comic is that you forget how much you're in your own head when you're writing. It's very solitary, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think I fully appreciated how much that can wreck my head as well. Just spending hours writing and in your head. So I love seeing them and not being in my head and being able to talk and be more fluent, as I'm speaking. Anyway, Keep It Tight is doing very well. I think we're both doing well, Dermot. We're up there in the charts beside each other.
Yeah. Deirdre, thank you so much. It's just been a brilliant conversation. I think people will take so much from this. So
I hope so.
Yeah. Best of luck with everything.
And likewise.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.